Miami appears to be team number 3 in the ACC. Florida State and Clemson, that's the way the betting odds look. And then it's Miami. Donno, where do you feel the Hurricanes stand as we move through spring football compared to the two programs that are seen as the heavyweights in the ACC this year?
Miami should be able to push both of them, especially given what I talked about with what I feel is a pretty favorable schedule, even in the ACC. It's never going to be as tough as an SEC or Big Ten schedule, but I think Miami avoided a couple of the better teams that are always tough to get wins against.
I think missing NC State is big. I think
it's huge.
I think the Wolfpack have had a great offseason.
Yeah, and they completely negated Miami's offense last year. And it wasn't just Tyler Van Dyke with his signature interceptions, because NC State really made it tougher on him than it had to be. So it's like Miami should very well be in that mix, Spencer, for a couple of the reasons. Like I do, DJ Uyunglele, I like him. I think, and he may have in certain areas a better supporting cast. I'm not positive on that based on what I'm seeing from Miami, but just in a straight up vacuum, I would take Cam Ward over DJ Uyunglele.
Oh, I would too. Oh, I absolutely. I think DJ, for those on YouTube, you saw me put my hand out like this. I think he's fine.
Yeah.
Solid. I don't think he's capable of being the reason you win games, but he's definitely capable of being the reason that you didn't lose a game, and he can help you win games. But we saw at Clemson, they tried it for, a full season, and it just did not work out very well. That you can't run an offense through him the way you can, a Cam Ward, for instance. Now, Ward, I think, will be in a complementary offense because Mario Cristobal wants to run the ball behind those great offensive lines that he has built his entire coaching career. I think DJU is fine, but Florida State's roster is very good. Their talent acquisition in the transfer portal has been very, very good. One of the 5 best classes in all of college football. And I think that's, kind of an interesting dynamic to see play out. Like, coach during the game and quarterback, or coach during the game, I'll take Florida State. Quarterback, I'll take Miami. Roster, probably edge Florida State, but how much of an edge is it really?
Yeah, and I think where Florida State in recent years has had an especially big edge against Miami, their defensive backfield is loaded. Like I talked about Miami's defensive backfield being kind of a work in progress. Florida State always has typically one of the, at least in the times when they've been good, they had a couple lean years recently, but when they're on top, they typically have a top defensive backfield. I think that's the case. They are still deep despite losing some guys on the defensive line. And also, like, I don't discount the advantage of having just done last year what Miami hasn't done in a very long time, and that's go undefeated in the regular season and win a conference championship. So even though, you lose Jordan Travis, you lose Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, some other important offensive pieces, to graduation or to the NFL. But Florida State, like you said, the talent acquisition has been good. Mike Norvell's doing a hell of a job there. In my mind, Florida State, until proven otherwise, should be favorites in the ACC. I think with Clemson, I'm not, in this new era of college football, I'm not sold on Dabo Swinney, and I'm definitely not sold on Cade Klubnik. With that said, they still have tremendous athletes, and they are well coached. The issues that I have with Dabo are, him not embracing the transfer portal. It's like become a trench he's dug himself into where it's a point of pride for him. He doesn't bring in any transfers. He despises NIL. I know a lot of fans rally around him for that. I'm not convinced that that's sustainable in the current college football landscape. So I feel like Clemson could be a team that, and I know every time we think they're going to underperform, they end up winning 9 or 10 games anyway. But I think this could be a year where they fall off just a little bit. So with that said, I'm not automatically putting Miami in like the number 2 slot in the ACC because I think there's a couple teams being slept on here, Spencer. I mean, we already talked about NC State, who I think is a little underrated. I think their win total is like 8.5 or 7.5.
It is indeed 8.5 for Dave Dorn and company.
And then another one that's at 8.5, I think is underrated is Louisville. I think their quarterback situation is going to be better this year than it was last year. And Jeff Brom, who already did a heck of a job in his rookie campaign as head coach at his alma mater, is heading into his second year. I really respect him as being an offensive genius. I try not to use that term loosely. So I think Louisville's a little underrated, and Miami has them on the schedule on the road this year. They lost to them in a shootout at home at the end of last season. They have them on the road this year. That's one of the tougher games on the schedule. I put that right behind Florida State. And so, I think North Carolina's a bit of a wild card, but I don't know if like losing Drake May, I don't know how quickly they're going to bounce back from that. But I really look at, to me, in no particular order, except Florida State, I'll put them at the top. Florida State, and then in no particular order, Miami, Louisville, NC State, and of course Clemson. But I think they might drop off a little bit. I think to me those are the primary teams that I would worry about in terms of Miami, because I do think, Spencer, that if Miami doesn't get to the ACC championship game, which there's no more divisions, top 2 records, if they don't get to that championship game, there is going to be some disappointment. I guess if they were to get to it and win it, that would be the icing on the cake. But if they're not one of the top 2 records in the conference, I think there would be some disappointment among the fan base and among the decision makers. So I think Miami is building the type of roster where they are expected to compete for that ACC championship game.
Something I talk about here on the show all the time that everydayers are familiar with at this point is I have a hard time not liking or leaning in favor of teams that return your coach, quarterback, and offensive coordinator. And at Clemson, you've got Dabo Swinney, you've got Garrett Riley, you've got Cade Klubnik. Those 3 guys were at the head of the table last year. Those 3 guys will be at the head of the table this year. Now, that's not to say that newcomers and new situations like Cam Ward at Miami can't work out potentially even better than Cade Klubnik. But I think when you have talented guys and you give them coaching continuity, it's a rare thing nowadays because the carousel can be so wild and crazy and such. But it's another reason in the SEC. Who do I really like? Georgia. Okay, that's not a hot take or anything. But
Breaking
who do
news.
Big take. They're going out on a limb saying Georgia's good. But one of the reasons that I was talking about the other day on the show, I don't know who's stopping Georgia, is you've got Mike Bobo back as the OC, Kirby at the head coach, and Carson Beck at quarterback, who I think's a stud. Who else do I like in the SEC? Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, head coach and offensive coordinator, and then you've got Jackson Dart back at quarterback. Or Texas, Quinn Ewers, and Steve Sarkisian. So I'm consistent with that philosophy, and that's why I have a hard time seeing Clemson falling off. But I think it'll be really telling if they do, because if that core, right, with that talented of a quarterback, that high caliber of an offensive coordinator, all returning, if it then doesn't work, then long-term questions about Dabo Swinney in the modern era, I think can be asked. And I want to get out of here on with you on this today, Donno. I think that you've laid out well the teams that are most likely to contend for the ACC title. Florida State, Clemson, Miami will be in the mix, NC State could push. Who's another team, Louisville you mentioned as well, but who's another team that might not be on everybody's radar that you're looking at as an ACC guy and saying, hey, I can't sleep on them? For a lot of people, the trendy pick is SMU.
Yep.
I think Rhett Lashley's good. And Preston Stone could have a really good year as he did a season ago. I just don't know about that G5 to P4 jump. It didn't go great for the programs in the Big 12. Maybe SMU is different, but is that the team that you're looking at for what I described?
It was. And another team, I don't think they're going to contend for an ACC championship, but I'm going to be fascinated to watch Duke. And I'm not saying they're going to be good because of what they lost, including Riley Leonard, heck of a player. Big loss losing their quarterback to Notre Dame, who did have issues staying on the field, but when he was on the field,
they were good.
He was the big show there. But like I'm very intrigued by what's going to happen with Malik Murphy at quarterback, because I know that like he's one of those guys where the ceiling is so high, the floor is very low, but the ability is through the roof, and I wonder what he can do there. And then of course I bring up Duke because as a Miami guy, I mentioned Mario Cristobal's predecessor not doing a very good job stocking the cupboards with recruits and talent. And that predecessor is now the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils, Manny Diaz, who I have maintained is a heck of a defensive coordinator. And he just proved that at Penn State after having proved it at previous stops, including Miami, because he was the DC at Miami before he became the head coach. So he's getting his second go around now as a head coach, Power 4 job again for him back in the ACC. So I don't necessarily think Duke's going to be good, but they could be if they can find some Malik Murphy magic. And Miami does have them at home on the schedule this year. So the Manny Diaz reunion is going to be one to watch.
Yeah, I think the other teams are the 2 Techs, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. Georgia Tech's making
a good one. Haynes King had a
nice
better year than people realize, because he's Haynes King. It's easy not to notice the guy, but he had a fine year last year.
Yeah, he absolutely did. Alex Donno, Locked On Canes, occasionally steps in for me here on Locked On College Football. Alex, appreciate it. Great stuff today.
Always great joining you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you then.